Now, as you watch the videos, there are certain things that you need to do. The first one is that you need to take notes. You need to write down words that people say that you don't know what they are, the names of people that you might want to find out more about, or different events like in history that people talk about. Um, every video is going to have its own sort of slant or viewpoint, so you need to have a sense that these folks are speaking their own truth, and that um, you don't have to just accept everything that they say out of hand. You can go ahead and Google some of this information yourself to see if it matches up with what the agreed upon record is on these ideas. You need to, once you take notes and do some Googling about, you will discover something. You will discover that you get your brain back. This is really important because I know that a lot of my friends and family and loved ones and people I don't know who are also my loved ones, we have the sense that we could never sort all of this stuff out. That it's too complicated, or I'm just not interested, or somebody else is in charge. It's not me. But the fact of the matter is that once you start learning about what's going on, your brain kicks in. It was designed to do things like compare and contrast, and to categorize and make up concepts and to help you think. I mean, that's what it's there for. And when you start actually looking at what people have to say and getting a sense of the themes that are being put forward, and if you look at enough stuff, then your brain gets a chance to do what it was made to do. So don't be afraid that you are going to be lied to or tricked or hoodwinked into believing yet another set of things that are not true. There's an underlying reality that we are all living in right now where we know we're being lied to. Even if we love Fox News and it's like our favorite station and you just love hearing what they have to say, underneath, quietly, in the back of your mind, you know you're watching a TV show and you're not actually watching news. You know that, maybe they're saying things that you want to hear, and so that's why you like to watch. But you have to accept the fact that you're watching because they're saying things that you like to hear, okay? Not because they're actually telling you what's going on in the world. And there's a big difference, right? Yes. So it's important to do this work and take a look at what all the information that has not been on the news, so that you can compare and contrast and get your research skills back. And when I talk about research skills, I'm talking about the thing you learned in 5th grade. Remember when you did your first book report in the 5th grade? Well, that is the level of knowledge and ability that you need in order to do this work. Not more than that. You will find that that's about what it takes. Whatever it took for you to get that book report done, the time you spend at the library, whatever, this is what it basically takes to do this work. And what this work is your democracy. This is how it functions. It doesn't function if you are not actually informed about what's going on. So I know that people like to say, oh, you have to participate, so get out there and vote. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something far more important than voting between Tweedledee or Tweedledum, right? I'm talking about you actually knowing what's going on. Because when you know what's going on, then you can take action that will actually have an effect on the situation. Um, so, whereas voting sometimes, most of the time, doesn't do that. Um, the last thing that you need to do is, this is what I want you to do. I want you to, you will focus on a category. I have several different categories of videos, um, playlist, and you'll focus on a category. You'll take the time to watch the movies, and as you watch the movies, some of the notes that you're going to be taking are the things that struck you, you know, that either struck your curiosity or made you upset or, things that you felt, stuff that you felt. Make notes because I want you to imagine that you're sitting in the lunchroom at work and someone brings up the subject of, the environment or, climate change or the state of the economy or the war or anything, and you have something to say because you've been doing your homework and you should be able to come up with one sentence or, if you like to talk a lot, maybe you'll come up with more than one sentence. But you need to come up with one sentence that says, you know, you know, I was looking into that and I believe because of this, I feel this way. That's what your sentence needs to be constructed of. Because of this, I feel this way. So you will have pulled out a fact or a name or an event, and you'll know what it is, and you'll know about it, and you'll be able to just speak that one sentence. And I'm telling you that that is a very powerful thing for you to be able to do. Because you know how it is when you're sitting around in the lunchroom and people are talking, if they ever do talk about stuff like this. You know, it's like everybody just says, well, I think and I believe, and they just kind of like are like repeating what they heard on their particular TV station. Nobody ever has any facts, right? Or information. And you don't want to like inundate people with information. It's not necessary. All you have to do is come up with one sentence. And it's going to take a while for you to craft that. You'll be surprised when you actually sit down to actually try to do it. And you'll be so proud of yourself. So you will have a message. And as you go through the different categories of playlists, you will end up with a message for each of those playlists that you have to say what you have to say based on what you found out. And if people want to, oh, you sound like you know what you're talking about, then you tell them, well, I'm doing my homework, and give them the little card. You know that you can buy like blank business cards? I love that. You can buy blank business cards and then you can write whatever you want on it. So you can write down the name of the YouTube site, say I did my homework, here, and be done with it. And you'll not have to speak another word, not another word to anybody about it. Because this is based on every individual person doing their homework. And you can't do that for anybody. Okay? And it's not your job. That's their job. Um, Now, everything that I suggest is based on a strategy. It's not just sort of a laundry list of ideas. What I've tried to do is to pick out the things that will actually have the most impact, that are strategic, that will make the kind of impact that actually would make a difference. And by taking the pledge, you are doing something vitally important. You are filling in the power vacuum. There is a power vacuum that exists because we are not participating in our own government. And therefore, there's has been room for powerful people to take over and to do all that work themselves for themselves. And the only way you're ever going to have political power again in America is if you fill in the power vacuum. You must stand and occupy that space. Yes, occupy. You must occupy that space yourself, not your representative, you. And that is why this is a lifestyle change, because none of our daily lives is set up so that there's a certain amount of time every week that we spend actually doing democracy. We don't do democracy, so why would we expect to have it, right? Okay, so those are the things that you need to do as an individual. Everybody, I mean everybody, everybody. And I set up my videos so that a lot of them are these really not cool at all PowerPoint slides. And I'm going to put everything on PowerPoint slides and then read them out loud. And I'm doing this for a reason, because I know that there are a lot of folks out there who are not strong readers and people who just really don't enjoy reading. And reading is your key to freedom. You must be able to read and read well and read a lot. And so, number one, I've set up a video playlist. This is the only reason why I'm even bothering with YouTube and all this technology. It's because if you're not a strong reader, you can watch the videos and you can watch the PowerPoint presentations and read along as I read them out loud, so that you can start to build and boost your literacy. It's so important, and that's why I'm doing it. I'm doing that for you. Okay. The second thing that a person can do after you take the pledge and start watching the videos, when you feel moved to do so, you move on to the next step. Okay? And these are in no certain order. Okay? But the second thing is to learn to garden. Now, you know what? It turns out that it can take up to 5 years to create good soil in your garden, so that you're actually growing a productive amount of food. So this is not something that you want to put off to the last minute. If you have any soil or land or space at all, you need to start getting out there, dig a hole, take that dirt to the extension office, and get the soil tested so that you can find out what it's going to take to get your soil going. I live someplace where it is hard clay, and it is going to take a while for this soil to get in a condition where it'll be able to produce happily. And I already know a certain amount about gardening, and it's still going to take a long time. It's going to take an even longer time for me because I don't have an income. Now, I know there's a lot of us out there who don't have money to be going out and buying rototillers and and getting landscape people to come in and all that stuff. So we got to get out there with our shovels, and my bad back, I have a bulging disc in my lower back, um, and dig quietly and slowly and determinedly and surely, and figuring out how we're going to do our compost pile, because you need to have those. You need to be using your kitchen scraps in your garden. Otherwise, you're not going to have the bacteria that you need to have the soil be alive and keep the plants alive. So learn to garden. I put up some really cool videos. All of these things are in the things that are right about the world section of the video playlist. I think it's really cool that you can make a garden using stacked soda bottles, and you put the dirt in that, so that even if you just have a balcony in your apartment, you can grow plants. Man, you just check it out. like I told you, people have been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and you just never hear about it. So you're actually lucky, all right? You are very lucky because a lot of people have already figured out this stuff, and they're more than happy to share the information with you. And I'm just in that section on things that are right about this world. I'm just putting together, these are just examples. I have like over 20 videos in there, and these are just examples of what people are doing. And once you start looking around and asking, you will find that people in your community are doing stuff. And they're just waiting for you to notice so that you can come and help. You know? That's all. That's all. So, no, this is not an impossible, situation. Solutions are there, and you can do them as soon as you are ready. Okay? This is my news. This is my good news that I have come to share with you, with America, and with the world. Is that you need to wake up and realize that we already know what to do. We already know what to do to fix the problems that we are living in. We know how to end the wars. We know how to make sure that everyone has food to eat. We know how to stop all the crime and the insanity, and the mental health issues. We know what to do. They just haven't been telling you about it because it's not in the interest of a small group of people for us to change. But that's a very precarious situation for them to be in, let me tell you, because there are millions and billions of us and just a handful of them. So let's move on. You learn to garden and um, and get that green thumb going. And you're doing this because you want to be able to provide your own food and store up as much food as you can. Do your prepper work, I call it. There are people out there who are preparing for the end. Well, you need to do that. Um, um, Not just because there's an upcoming financial crisis and you're really gonna want to have you know at least a few months stores of food and have identified a source of clean water that you can get access to. There's certain things that you just need to have your stuff together. One of my big messages to everybody at every income level is it's time to get your house in order financially. Try to figure out what it is you can do and do it. Now is not the time to be going into debt buying that boat you've always wanted, okay? Don't do that. Just wait a while, okay? And see how things pan out, because you might find, that you're going to have to move on to that boat. And the problem is that when there's a financial crisis, then you can't sell and run, because nobody's buying, okay? So whatever it is you got, that's what you've got. And if you've got debt, then the banks are going to come and they're going to take your shit, man. Okay? And the other thing about when we have a currency crisis is that the same thing that always happens. They come to the taxpayers and say, you're the one who has to give it up, So you really need to be prepared around that and get your affairs in order. The other more important reason for doing this is not because the end is near, but because the beginning is here. Okay? If you want to be able to change things, then you need to have leverage and you need to have power. And you're not going to be able to do that unless you are not beholden to the man, okay, for your paycheck. Because it could be that you are someone who perhaps works in the media, you know, and you're not willing to continue to just do the same stories that get presented, at your planning meeting every day. That you really want to do a show that where you go and interview Palestinians for a change, and you may want to do that. But what you're going to find is that chances are you're going to be out of a job if you try to do that. And this is why a lot of things don't change, or why people don't come forward is because they know that they'll lose their jobs if they start being honest. And that's true. So grow your garden, okay? This is what we're doing, is we are preparing to take back control of our nation. And in order to do that, with every revolution or whatever that occurs, or when people are striking and trying to get living wages and things like that, you have to be prepared to take care of yourself. So you need to have a housing situation that is stable. You need to have a financial situation that is stable, and that is one that is going to be subsidized by food that you grow yourself. If you're going, don't buy the boat, buy the solar panels, for God's sake. Okay? If you have money, you need to be thinking about what you're going to actually use it for, because you need to be able to be resilient. Okay? If we're going to do this, that's the second thing you need to do, is to become as resilient as you possibly can. As we refuse to cooperate with this system and start living in a better way, they will use techniques to disrupt and punish us by cutting off our power, cutting off our gas and fossil fuels, disrupting our transportation, and cutting off and limiting our communications. They'll even shut down the internet, for example. Um, so we need to be able to be prepared to be resilient in the face of these attacks that will probably come once we stop cooperating. And as I go along, we'll talk more about things that we will do to stop cooperating with the system and start building back our leverage as a political group, as a nation, because we're not a special interest, okay? We're us. We are it, okay? The third thing, that is not necessarily an individual thing, but now we're kind of moving into the community groups. Okay, like I said, things are based on several different levels, things that individuals and families can do, things that any community group can do, things that you can do with your city and county governments, things that you can do in business, things that our state and congressional representatives can do, things that political activists can do, and also things for the 1% and the area of philanthropy, things for them to do. And again, this is all strategic, so it's not a laundry list. These are the particular PowerPoints that we need to be pushing and utilizing. Okay, so PowerPoint number 1 is here. Yes, do your homework. PowerPoint number 2 is Sweet Mother Earth, getting back involved with her and having a direct relationship with where your food comes from, so that you can survive and thrive and help others to survive. The more that we're able to do this, the less you'll have to worry about people, running around, stealing and robbing and running in the streets. I always like to say also that it's really important for us folk, okay, who are going to be the ones in the streets, okay, rioting because there's no food. We're the ones who really need to be looking at, how do I get a garden going even if I'm living in the hood, okay? Because there is urban gardening. There is urban guerrilla gardening, and you can find out about it and you can do it, okay? So, and even if you make your living selling little baggies on the corner, you can help, because at this point, I don't care where the money comes from, okay? We're not worrying about that. What we're looking at is, where are we investing our time and our money? And once you get through doing your business, maybe you still have some time available to do your homework. Okay? And you can rearrange your schedule. There are only certain people who are not going to be able to do this, and those are the sick and the infirmed. Okay? And I consider anyone who's addicted to serious drugs to be one of the sick and the infirmed. And so if you can't get it together, then don't worry about it, sweetheart. It's not a problem, because there are plenty of us who are willing, able, capable of doing what we need to do. And one of the first things we're going to do when we get our power back, of course, is to make sure that we're putting money into the drug rehab centers like we should be, so that people can get off drugs. And when we have an economy that works, there'll be something for you to do once you get off drugs. And there'll be something for you to do once you get out of jail. Okay? So it's all of a piece. And you're going to learn this. This is the first thing you learn in environmental studies, is that everything is connected. So you can't just do one thing or the other. It's all of a piece, and one thing supports the other. That's why you do your homework, because you are the backbone and the basis for your own democracy. And if you don't know what's going on, then your democracy fails. Okay? So, taking the pledge, learning to garden, for real. Okay? For real. This is not just some really cool, wonderful hippie idea. Okay? I mean, that's what it started out as. But this is going to be the difference between us making it and getting our country back and not. Is those tomatoes. Okay? All right. Number 3 is beef up your food banks. I know that there are a lot of wonderful people out there who volunteer every week to go to the food bank and work and haul those boxes around and haul that food around and stand up in that freezer and do what it takes to help people get food. If you are a volunteer in a food bank, if you sit on a food bank board, if you utilize a food bank, and I know that every town and community is different, and so you, as a person who uses the food bank, you may feel connected to the organizers of the food bank, and you may not. So it's really up to you to decide. But it's really important that we beef up our food banks. And what I mean by that is that if your food bank system doesn't have refrigeration and freezers, then that's what you need to be looking for grant money for, looking for people to donate or do whatever it takes to get your food bank up to speed, so that you're able to provide not just canned goods, but frozen foods and meats, and making sure that you have a really good relationship with the grocery stores in your area. Um, so making sure that you have enough food storage capacity, um, and making sure that your local gardens are connected to provide surplus to the food banks. This is a wonderful activity for younger folks, um, uh, you know, who can be called at a moment's notice, because y'all is always on the phone. So I know you can be called at a moment's notice. There's not a problem about that. To go out to a particular house, and pick the vegetables and take them to the food bank. You can do this. Um, I was in a situation where people were actually calling around asking if somebody would please come and pick their green beans, because they had a lot of heavy rain, and they were totally everywhere, and they were going to rot if somebody didn't pick them. And this was somebody who was like a senior person who didn't really need all this food, but they'd been gardening for years, for generations, and so they had all this food. And it would have been so easy to have like 3 or 4 teenagers or young folks go out there, pick that stuff, take it to the food bank, wash it, bag it, and have it ready for distribution, or put it in the freezer and have it ready for distribution. So that should be a part of every food bank. And of course there are people who do community gardens that are set up specifically to go to the food banks. The reason why we're doing this is, once again, it's for resilience. Okay, it's not just for now, it's for tomorrow, when people are losing their jobs because the powers that be are starting to manipulate and punish us for taking a stand against them. And when people are trying to do the right thing and are ending up losing their jobs, or having to, get jobs that don't pay as much, who are actually out there taking the risk and suffering the consequences for getting our country back. And when there's a financial crisis also, and people's money simply isn't worth anything, then our food banks need to be ready to go into crisis mode, and ramp up and be there, you know, for a while, for a long time, and maybe have to be open like 4 or 5 days a week, to help provide for people. And and of course, there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking people who go to the food bank to sign up for a shift. You can have that on the wall by the line where everybody's standing, and have people sign up for shifts. This is one of those, I call them urban legends. That people who get social services are lazy and don't care. I mean, that's like the total opposite of the truth. Someone who doesn't care doesn't bother to get up off of their butt and go and sign up and find out what they need to do to get social services so they can take care of their family. That is what a responsible person does. Okay? If they're having financial problems and they're not able to make ends meet, a responsible family member person goes and finds out what it is that they qualify for, so that they'll be able to keep the lights on, and make sure that their kids have clothes and clean clothes to go to school and stuff. So that is the exact opposite. And what they have found, that when, especially like with the microloan programs, they found that they get like 75-90% repayment on microloans. Okay? People don't default on those things, because they really have an appreciation and a sense of responsibility for having gotten them. And you'll find the same thing at every level in social service. If you would just bother to ask, if you would just bother to ask, you would find that there are a lot of people on the food bank line who would be more than happy to go out and pick vegetables and provide for the food bank. They're looking for an opportunity to give back. They want it to be something that, that they are helping, and they don't just want to just be taking and not giving. That is a natural inclination of the human heart, and we need to acknowledge that. Okay, so when it comes to beefing up your food banks and being able to ramp them up so they can provide for more people over a longer period of time, um, these are the things that you need to do. And don't forget to just ask the people who are using the food bank if they'd be willing to help, because a lot of them are. I mean, some of them can't because, they're not physically able to help, but a lot of folks can. Um, And again, if you're one of the stakeholders who's going to be out there rioting for food, then you should definitely be one of the people taking the lead and participating in ramping up your food banks. Now, also, although food banks may not wish to encourage this, I think it's important to point out that food banks are actually the only way for low-income people to do any kind of food prepping. So even if you don't feel like you need to go to the food bank, that you have just enough money for your food and your rent and everything, do you have 3 to 5 months food supply? Do you have a food supply at home of canned goods, powdered milk, powdered mashed potatoes, beans, and the containers to keep them in? Do you have that? Because if you don't, then the food bank is a really good way to get that extra food and have it and put it in proper storage. Now, they may not encourage people to use the food bank for storing, because what you'll find, depending on where you live, okay, if it's a more conservative area, they think about food banks differently, and they think, oh, well, they're kind of living in this little dream world that says that people have temporary hardships, but then they get back on their feet and they're okay. And they're not looking at all at the state of our economy, and the disparity between rich and poor, and the permanent poor, and the permanently underemployed, and the $7 an hour that people are getting paid. They're not looking at any of that, okay? So they have a tendency to, want to know, why did you come to the food bank today? Well, I don't have enough money for food, and you know what? Next month when I come, I'm gonna have the same answer, Um, so they tend to not want to think of it as you wanting to like store up food. This is just for emergency. You just happen to run out. So you need to get out of their sick fantasy world, okay, and come enjoy me in reality, and use the food bank for food prepping, okay. If you are low income, just go and get the canned goods and stuff. And you can tell them, I don't want any of the fresh stuff. I just want the canned goods, and the stuff that I can keep in my cabinets. Tell them you don't have a refrigerator, whatever. Okay, but do that, because it's the only way that you'll be able to be resilient. And like I said, you're going to be the one who's going to need to be the most resilient in the end. Okay. Let me see. You can't get super long-term food storage items, but you can get the canned goods, beans and grains, dry milk, and other commodities like peanut butter and canned juices. The USDA, they have what they call commodities. You remember government cheese, well, they have commodities that come out like once a month. And some of the food banks provide them and some of them don't. You need to find out which ones are the ones that get the commodities. But those are also really good ways of getting food that you can keep. They have like even canned juices, and it's always something different. But you can get things like peanut butter and rice and all that good stuff. So that's number 3. First, we're taking the pledge and we're doing our homework. Then we're going to beef up our food banks and utilize our food banks. And if that, which is also a good way to help beef them up, because when they find that they have more and more people using the food bank, it actually helps the food banks to qualify for more funding, and either through government grants or through private grants. It helps, so it's not a bad thing. To actually make use of the food banks. And the second thing was to learn to garden. Third thing is finances. Now, again, we're moving up the scale here. We're moving up the scale, and now we're looking at what any and all community groups and or individuals can do.